plan for today is we're gonna do a review. I anticipate this review will take like 45-ish minutes, give or take. And we can answer whatever questions you have. The exam opens up, I think I have it for 3:30. So 3:15 or 3:30, it opens up today, closes. It's got a good chunk of time to take it. But we just want to make sure that if there are any questions that we address them. So. Okay, so first things first, I want to like take us a step back to the beginning of class, first day, when we talked about the class structure. Because I think it's helpful to understand, remind ourselves about like where I'm coming from and how I'm trying to set the class up. So some principles I tried to follow was, let's create spaces where we can try things, explore things without the worry of losing points. And so a lot of the hands-on in-class activities were geared towards this, of how can we learn through exploration, learn from preparing before class and then coming to class and actually doing it. More important than I think walking away knowing what a chi-square test is knowing how to use your resources like AI, like resources out there to learn new skills. This field is constantly changing, and it's an important skill to know how to learn and to be lifelong learners. So that's kind of the goal there. We'll also have exams that are closed AI, but acknowledge that we live in a world with AI. And so we talked about this. A lot of the questions on the exam won't have you just start like freehanding code. They acknowledge we live in a world with AI. So what things do you still need to know? And we'll evaluate you on those things. To kind of do this, the way I've set it up is we first introduce a concept, high level, the what, the why, when to use it. Get the big idea. We then do exposure. So if I was to do this class again, I'm not sure if I would do data particularly again, but I do hope that those pre-class like Google Colab files were helpful. That's the code that I want you to focus on. I'll mention this multiple times throughout today, but there will be a couple questions on the midterm where there'll be like screenshots of code, and you're in a situation where it's like, hey, AI returned this code to you, like explain what's going on. If it's a question like that, that code is coming from those pre-class files. There's 3 of them, the 3 bivariate pre-class files, numeric, numeric, categorical. Those are the files that contain the syntax that I care you walk away from this class knowing. Then it's time to practice. That's where we spend time in class, maybe a little bit more than you've done in your like 100, 200 level classes, a little bit less of me maybe speaking and more you having the chance to explore and practice without the worry of, am I going to lose points? Am I going to get this wrong? But like, let's actually take what we've done in the pre-class and start applying it with TAs and I are available to answer questions. Homework then just kind of reinforces it. Review is those extra reps, and then the assessment, prove what you know. Right now we're hanging out in that review space. We really want to make sure that if there are gaps, because I'm not perfect, you guys are basically perfect, but I'm sure there were some gaps in your maybe work as well, right? Like if there's some gaps, now's the time to identify them and fill those in. Obviously, I created all of this before general conference, but there was a snippet of general conference that I like felt validated this thought process I had. It was from Brother Webb. He's in the Sunday School General Presidency, and he's talking more about just Sunday school lessons in general. But I think it applies. So we're gonna watch like 30 seconds of the clip. But I think again, a lot of what he talks about does apply to what I've been trying to do.
That will help invite the influence of the Holy Ghost. One of these principles is invite diligent learning. In the past, we may have thought of teaching as a chance for a parent or teacher to invite the Spirit into their own preparation, and then share what they have learned with children or class members whose role it has been to listen. But even more effective is when we as learners also come prepared. And when teachers create learning experiences that foster personal revelation directly to our hearts and minds. Then as we're given opportunities to share what we are learning through our study and from the Holy Ghost, we help each other to be instructed and edified. As
So again, that was more geared towards Sunday school classes or learning in the home or things like that. But I try to incorporate those principles here where instead of me just speaking and you just purely listening, I think there's times and places for that. I don't think we need to swing the pendulum too far one direction. But more I see it as how do we create learning experiences where you come prepared and then we experience something together that helps our learning. Now, like I said, I'm obviously not perfect at it. I'm sure there are gaps. So that's where we are right now is where are those gaps and where can we identify those gaps and make sure that we address those before we take the exam. So there's a few resources that we have for you. So one, the TAs held a review yesterday. Guys, great job on the review. Like I read through their slides and their materials and have some really good stuff there. And so they've posted it in the recording in the Slack general channel. Highly recommend, even if you don't necessarily watch it, that you at least go through their materials. Two TA hours. So they have tons of TA hours. Unfortunately, unlike IS 201, the dean's office has not designated a physical space that's IS 415 TAs. Like they're just the space just does not exist within the building. But the TAs will like their hours are posted in the Learning Suite schedule. You can Slack them, they can help you with Slack, you can set up a Zoom link. A lot of times they are on campus, so if you're on campus too, if the IS lab is open, you're welcome to go there or meet in the atrium. So if you want to meet up physically, you usually can rearrange that. There's just not a designated space where you can camp out all day. I'll do extra office hours this week, just in anticipation of the exam. So today after class, I'll be there till 4, but then Thursday, since we don't have class, I'll be there from 10 to 11 and then 1:45 to 2:30. Please though, if those hours don't work, or if you find out you have questions after the fact, please Slack me. Like I'm happy to help. We can either just Slack and answer the questions, we can hop on a Zoom, we can see if we can arrange something in person. But please, like seriously, like message me if you have questions, like please reach out. Other recommendations. So again, TA review materials, those are golden. The study guide is also really helpful. It lists out all the concepts that you should be familiar with. The concept intro slides, those give a good high level, the what, the why, when we would use stuff. I would recommend just going through those again if you're a little iffy. I would highly recommend you go through the pre-class syntax assignments. Again, just the 3 of them, not the data camp ones, but the bivariate, numeric and numeric, numeric categorical and categorical. Those are like the pieces of code, those statistical tests and those visualizations are the ones that I want you to know. They've been like highlighted there.
So we don't need to really worry about doing like the data camp ones, just.
No, you don't need to know the syntax there. I would know high level what's going on there. And I'm hoping that between this review, their review, and the concept intro slides, that it will be conveyed. Yeah. After that, in-class activities or homework, you're obviously welcome to do those. I'd probably prioritize those other things first, though, if you're limited on time. But then I would also prioritize the practice exam. The practice exam, I'd say, would give you a pretty good indicator of the type of questions asked. You can start it, you can walk away, you can take it multiple times. The questions won't change, but if you want to take it multiple times, the settings on that practice exam are pretty loose. So use it as you need. I will say the one difference is when I wrote the midterm, I decided to make the free response questions way more specific. So on the practice, it's like, explain this code and then analyze it. And I realized that's a good question, but for an exam that needs to be graded is also kind of vague. It leaves you trying to guess, well, like how detailed or what part of the code and how do we grade your lengthy response against someone's concise but also accurate response, right? And so the prompts on the midterm are way more specific. Because of that, the prompts look longer, but I think it will actually result in your answer being shorter. It'll be like, explain this part of the code and this part and this part, and explain what the p-value means in this context, explain what the r-value means in this context. So it's a lot more explicit in what it's asking for. Yeah.
We don't really need to know like R squared and all that or?
Yeah, we will need an R squared, and then in this review I have, I'll kind of highlight all the stuff you'll wanna know, and then pair that with the study guide. Yeah, you'll wanna know R squared. Okay, midterm overview, so there's 28 questions, it's 100 points, questions range from 3 to 8 points, Learning Suite will show you how many points each one is. 5 free response questions, 23 multiple choice questions. It's timed at 4 hours, but I'm guessing most will take it in 1 to 2 hours. I just did the 4 there just so that you can take it in one sitting and hopefully you're not rushed on time. But if you know, like, hey, mentally, I'll just do a lot better if I knew I had 6 hours, just reach out to a TA and we'll give you the 6 hours. Again, I'm not using the time as a make you rush. I just wanna make sure you take in one sitting. I will say though, at a certain point, like, I don't know if more time's gonna help you. At a certain point, like, it is what it is, and just like, go live your life type of thing. We will use Proctorio, just an FYI with Proctorio. Every single exam I've ever seen on Proctorio has been flagged. You will be flagged. That does not mean that you're gonna fail the exam or that we're gonna dock points. If your cat walks in the background, we'll see the flag and we'll be like, cute cat, and then we'll like move on with our life. Or if your roommate opens the door, we'll be like, cool, they have a normal life and their roommate opened the door, and then their roommate realized they were taking a test, and then the roommate turned around and like walked away, right? Like, so unless we see that you're cheating, like, don't sweat it, don't worry about it. Just because you're flagged, because again, everyone will be, that does not mean we're deducting you points. It just means that we'll like look at it, see your cute cat, and then like move on with our day. That being said, the Marian School has a value of integrity, and I believe in this strongly. I also believe that most of us are baptized members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have chose to make a covenant with God to try to be like Jesus Christ. And part of that means to live an honest integrity-filled life. Please do not cheat on the exam. It's not worth it. This exam is closed, all resources, all people. It's very black and white what is considered cheating. If you're using anything other than what's already in your brain when you push start, that's like, it's pretty cut and dry. So please just don't cheat. It's not worth it. Outside of just the moral aspect of it, but from a purely academic aspect of it, per junior core policy, per what the department chair has said, I will report it to the honor code office. You will receive a 0 on the midterm, and I will report it to the MISM admissions committee. So please, just don't cheat. None of you have cheated yet on an exam here, so I'm not calling anyone out, but please just don't. Along with that, please do not discuss the exam with other students before the exam. If you want to discuss it with your friend in another major or with your spouse, go for it. But just when things spread, it causes unfair advantage to certain students and whatnot. So just don't discuss the exam until it closes. Any questions with just like the structure of the exam? Yeah.
I guess just like a question with like Proctorio.
Yeah.
I know it like wants you to stare at the camera like the
Yeah.
So like if there's just times that you're like kind of like say different
Yeah.
questions.
I'm not gonna like be like, oh my gosh, here's an automatic 0. One, we would at least have a discussion about it. But two, another thing that what this exam's gonna do, and at the end of today, we're actually gonna like go through a practice of this, is it will have you at random intervals, like take your laptop and like show what's around you. So the idea being, if you're looking off in the distance, that means there's probably like a whiteboard there, right? The idea is if you were to spin that around. Now, I'll be real, I'm not naive. I know you can still cheat with Proctorio, right? I hope it deters most of you, but if someone really wants to cheat, if you're smart enough, I'm sure you can figure out a way to cheat. So I'm not calling out you, Abigail, but just in general, right? So it's more of, at the end of the day, it's a matter of just like your honor and integrity of whether or not you're going to cheat. But yeah, I'm not gonna like give you a 0 if you're staring off in space unless there's like another reason for it.
So will the exam take us into like any external tools?
No, it will
Just all-
purely just be the Learning Suite browser. Yeah. Yeah, we decided not to do a SSA. I think there's some good things with that, but I think they still wanted to give it some more time. So we're purely learning suite, which will make it nice for proctorio. You don't have to switch any tabs or go to any links. It's all just right there in the learning suite browser.
Wait, never mind. I have a similar question.
Okay, I want to do some overview on the content. I sent out a little like emoji poll on Slack to kind of get a gauge of what we should spend time on. I don't know if a single person selected dataset overview, but we're gonna go through it really fast and then move on to some of the other stuff. So dataset overview is an overview of the dataset. Some common methods, properties to be aware of are dot shape. This tells you like number of rows, number of columns. Dot head gives you the first 5 records, gives you a preview. Dot info tells you data types, nominal counts. Dot describe some high level univariate stats. Dot unique, the number of unique values within a categorical variable. And maybe actually, yeah. And then value counts, the counts of those unique values.
Will this be seen on the Slack? Or
Slack?
on Learning.
Yeah, so it's already on Learning Suite. If you go to content, class materials next to today. Yep. Okay, next is data cleaning. So let me preface this by saying this. There is a ton within the world of data cleaning. In this class, we probably covered this much with the hope that as you learn to just use your resources, as you come across something that needs to be cleaned, you can use your resources, AI, to clean it. That being said, on an exam, I'm not going to test you about some other random data cleaning thing we haven't talked about. I'm only going to test you about the things we explicitly talked about in class. And with that, like I said, the only syntax, like, hey, explain this block of code questions I'm going to do are related to that bivariate analysis. So I will not have a block of code related to data cleaning and be like, hey, explain this line by line. So there was that data camp video that was kind of gnarly, that had a lot of stuff going on. We need to focus on high level what was happening, not the ins and outs with it. And we'll go through some slides to kind of highlight some things there. So the 4 topics related to data cleaning that we talked about in this class were converting data types, grouping by keyword, missing data, and then determining outliers by the IQR method. So we're gonna go through kind of each of those. So first off, finding the missing values. So we use dot isNA dot sum. Dot isNA will return true or false if the value is missing, and then dot sum will sum up those trues, and so return the count of what values are missing. Kind of the rule of thumb we follow is if a column has 5% or less of the values missing, we think that's small enough that we can just drop those records. If it has more than 5% missing, we usually impute it either with something that in the business context makes sense or by like subgroup. Any questions with missing values? It's easy.
Is the cutoff 5% for imputing just because it's easier to just drop it instead of imputing?
Yeah, like if you decided to impute it and it was less than 5%, I wouldn't say it's necessarily wrong, right? It's just sometimes it's easier just to remove them. Yeah. And that again, that kind of brings it up to, I see the exam as one way of evaluating, and then I also see the homework that's due tonight as another way of evaluating. On the homework tonight, you'll notice that there's only a few records that are missing. My guess is most of you will just drop them. But let's say you're like, no, you know what? I really want to impute them with this subgroup mean. That's not wrong. Like that's valid. That would then have a domino effect. It would lead you to have slightly different answers compared to someone else. Not drastic, because it's just a few records. Slightly different answer. And that's still fine. For that homework, there's not a perfect right answer we're looking for. More, did you make valid decisions, back those decisions up, and have insights that match those decisions, even if yours is different than someone else. It's hard to replicate that in a multiple choice exam, which is why multiple choice exam will kind of ask slightly different questions there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm honestly not super positive when to impute the numbers with like the subgroup mean versus the median versus the mode. Is that something that I should study?
I'm not on the exam, but good to know just in general, like we'll be doing some projects later this semester where that could be useful. So again, you could make an argument for one and someone else can make an argument for the other. So it's kind of just, can you back your reasoning up? A median is probably your best bet. Let me back up. If the data is like normal, then mean is a good one to do. If the data is skewed, then mean is probably also adjusted because of that skewness. And so the median is probably the best one. And then mode is probably best if it's a categorical variable.
Okay. Yeah. So why is mode best if it's categorical?
That's the only option. So you
Yeah.
can do mean or median on text. So it's just mode was left.
It's just whatever one has the highest
Yeah.
amount, you
Yeah.
just fill it as well.
Yeah, and that's where it's best if it's subgroup, so it's a little bit more specific. You also could though have an example where it's like, okay, anything that's missing just means that there wasn't anything there. And so maybe in that case, the best thing is just to impute it with zeros, right? Like, it just depends on the context of the data. Okay, next is grouping by the keyword. So this is where that was that gnarly video in data camp. I'm gonna go through, I have some code here. I'm gonna go through it with you guys. Again, you're not gonna have to explain this particular code, but there is one multiple choice question that's high level. Do we understand holistically what's going on? And I think explaining the code will help us with that, Dylan.
I was just curious, like, back to the other thing.
Yeah.
Why in a real world situation we'd be okay dropping like up to 5%?
Great.
That seems like a ton of data.
Great question. So this brings up a key point with this. So the data we're working on is not the one and only place this data is stored. It's not the operational data set. It's not like the production data. Like it's not like we're getting rid of it forever. It's just we're getting rid of it for our analysis. And so at that point, it's a small piece, but you're right. Like we're not getting rid of it within our entire data. It's just in this particular analysis, if we're running like a model, we can probably get a decent model without that 5%.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so let's say that we have a data set and we have job title. And in job title, we have things like data scientist, senior software engineer, sales associate. And we want to create a department column. So department column, although it's displayed here, that's what we're wanting to create. And if our job title contains data or analyst, the department should be data and analytics. If the job title contains engineer or developer, the department should be engineering. And if it contains sales, it'll be sales. So what we can do is first off, we can create a list of conditions. So a list of conditions. What this first item in the list does is it takes my job title column, looks at the string and see if it contains data, type is or analyst. And in my case is false, so it's case insensitive. This will return a series of Booleans. So either true or false. It's going through all of my job titles. And if it contains data or analyst, it's a true. If it doesn't, it's a false. So we have a series of trues and falses. Then we do it again. So now we go back through job title again, but now we're looking to see if that string contains engineer or developer, true, false. Then we go through it again and we see if it contains sales, true or false. So my condition now is a list of Boolean series. It contains 3 series of either true or false. Choices is just a simple list of data analytics, engineering, sales. These are the options for my department results. NP.select, this is from the NumPy package, .select is basically like mapping them together. So it's taking my conditions and it's taking the first series. So my first series is those trues and falses associated with data or analyst. And if it's true, it's pairing it with the first choice, so data analytics. So if that first series, wherever there's a true, it's putting the department, my department column as data analytics. Then it's going to go through the second series. If it's true, it's going to put it as the second choice, engineering. Then it's going to go through the third series. And if it's true, it's going to pair it with sales. If it happens that all of them are false, then it's going to do the default of other. And we'll save that to our department column. So high level, what's going on is if you want to group by keyword, you use the conditions, which at the end of the day becomes a list of Boolean series. And you're able to pair that with the choices to get those new values.
Why would case equal false instead of case equal true? Would you wanna say like if it's true, then put it in?
So case is false is like case insensitive. Sensitive. Any questions? Just again, more like high level with this. Any questions about what's going on here?
So for things like this, it's not like you would give us the code and it'd be like case equals true and you're like, what's wrong with it? Like, we just need to know if we saw that, what's happening.
Yeah, and I'll tell you already for this question, there's one question on there, and you won't even see any. It's more of conceptually what's going on. I will say, I say that, you still want to study for it. It's not like the answers are like, oh, it's wrong because the color was green, right? Like, it's not gonna be like an obvious incorrect answer, so you still need to like know it, but it's not like you are writing out or explaining the code line by line for this problem.
Is it gonna be like, oh, this one's missing a parentheses, it's not that.
So the only questions where there's incorrect syntax are the subsetting. And there's 3 or 4 in the practice exam that will give you a really good idea of what that looks like. But for problems like this, there's not gonna be that. For the subsetting, yeah, it can be the difference of like parentheses, because that's pretty important with subsetting. But again, I felt okay doing that because there's several in the practice exam that are pretty similar.
The order of conditions and choices in the select matter.
Yeah, or,
Bottom when you're making.
bottom, I think it matters. I think that's probably what it's expecting. Yeah, my guess is it would matter, but these for sure matter. Like this one will be paired with the first conditions, etc.
Can we go through, are you gonna go through one of the subsetting things with like?
Yes, we'll go through it, yeah.
Get squirrel.
And I'll show you some of the common errors that I see with it. So I have that later. Okay. Making sure the data has the right data type. .as type will help convert data. Usually though, we pair it with .string .replace, because if let's say you have a number, but it also has like text in it or a $sign, usually you want to replace those characters with like an empty string, and then you're able to convert it to the dot. Yeah.
What does the dot string do?
The dot, yeah, so the dot string is just saying that this is like being applied on a string. So it's kind of like, where is it converting it? They think it's the property of, or it's not a property, it's a method of the string. I think you have to have that be on a string data type. Okay, and the last data cleaning thing is outliers. Variety of outlier methods. The method we've talked about in class is the IQR method. So IQR is that middle 50%. So the 75% Q3 minus 25% Q1, or sorry, a Q1. The outliers are Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. Anything below that is an outlier. On the opposite side, Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR, anything above that is an outlier. I would know that equation. Or then know where like how to find outliers with that.
This isn't like a test specific question, more like something I noticed on the homework.
Yeah.
Like you can do a like .describe that will give like, your min, max.
Totally, yeah.
median, all that stuff, as well as like your standard deviation.
Yeah.
Like if you're able to do a .describe and you just want to like clean data, like what in what context would you want just like the IQR, like to know the IQR?
Great question. So you're right. You can get the IQR from the .describe if you then just go do Q3 or 75 minus the 25, right? The benefit of doing the IQR is you now have those assigned to variables, whereas with the other one, you have to visually look at it, then assign it to variables. So if you're just doing something quick, easy, great, go for the dot describe. You wanna put something that's more like automatable, that's where having an actual variable there can help. Okay, univariate analysis. So this is where we're looking at, one variable, there's differences between if that variable is numeric or if it's categorical. So if it's numeric, we want to look at the measure of center. What is a typical value? Mean is the average, median is the middle, mode is the one that occurred the most. We also have measure of spread. So min is the lowest, max is the highest, range is that difference between the min and the max. Standard deviation is about how on average how far away are our data points from the mean. So for example, at an ice cream shop, the differences in prices we're seeing there, even from like a giant milkshake to a kid's little cone, probably isn't that drastic. Our standard deviation is going to still be pretty small. The averages are going to be, the data points are going to be pretty close to the average ice cream price. But at Walmart, where we're selling both a pack of gums and like a vacuum and a TV, right, there's going to be a much larger spread around the average price at Walmart. So we'll see a greater standard deviation. We also have the shape of the distribution. So a normal distribution or whether or not it's skewed. If our data is skewed right, then our mean will be greater than our median. So skewed right, let's think of it. A common example is if you're plotting the net worth of people. Most people have a pretty moderate net worth. So our median is kind of right there where the bulk of people are. But people like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, they have high net worth. Those are some outliers. It's going to skew it right. Since the mean is, let me add up all those values, right? It's going to be impacted by it. So the mean will also be pulled to the right. A less skewed is going to be the opposite direction. So a common example is most people retire in their 60s, but there are a few people who retire early. So my median will be there around the 60s, but my mean might be pulled down. So I would be familiar with how skewness impacts mean and median. Okay, if that one variable we're looking at is categorical, then we've got our frequency table. That's just the value count. So how often did that value occur? Mode is just what is most frequent, and then you can visualize it with that count plot.
Wouldn't mode be kind of redundant because both value counts and the count plot show you what?
It will also show you it. So this is just if you're like, I just want to know what that one single one is. But yeah, you can get that from the other two as well. Okay, so now we're moving into bivariate analysis. So the first one we'll look at is numeric to numeric. There are a couple tests we can run. So this is where I'm going to explain like conceptually what these are, when to use them, but these are the days where I would go back to those pre-class syntax ones and just be familiar with the syntax needed to generate a Pearson correlation and a linear regression. So Pearson correlation or just correlation produces an R value or correlation value. It ranges from -1 to +1, and it indicates strength and direction. So the closer it is to +1 or -1, the stronger the relationship. Closer it is to 0, the weaker the relationship. A linear regression gives you the linear regression equation. So y equals mx plus b. The slope, so that gives us the slope of the y-intercept. The slope is for every unit increase in x, what is the unit increase in y? And the y-intercept is if my x is 0, what is that y value? The linear regression also produces a p-value. It's technically associated directly with the slope, but kind of applies to it all in general. If that p-value is less than 0.05, then we say the linear relationship is statistically significant. If the p-value is less than 0.05, then we say any parent linear relationship is not statistically significant. It also produces an R squared value. So the R squared value is what percent of the variance in Y can be explained by X. So the higher it is, the more that the linear regression equation is explaining, or the more the X is explaining the Y. It's possible to have a really low R squared, so X really doesn't have much of the variance in Y, and also a really low p-value, so it is statistically significant. The analysis there would be there is a statistically significant linear relationship between X and Y. However, it's pretty weak. Like, I wouldn't go make some giant business strategy decision based off of this, because while it is statistically significant, it's weak. So it is very possible for those both to coexist. Any questions with numeric and numeric analysis? Alright, next is numeric and categorical. This is the one that most people on that little emoji Slack poll indicated the most. So I'll go through the definitions, and then I have an example that I hope will connect the dots. So a t-test is when you run a t-test when you have a categorical variable with two and only two groupings, male, female, yes, no, group A, group B, website A, website B. It returns two results, a t-stat and a p-value. The t-stat is just a measure of effect. We haven't talked about it much in class, so guess what? It probably won't be mentioned on the exam. The p-value we have talked about, so I would anticipate it on the exam. If that p-value is less than 0.05, then we say there is a statistically significant difference between those groups' means. If it's above 0.05, we say there is not a statistically difference. An ANOVA is very similar to a t-test. While a t-test is when the categorical variable has two and only two groupings, the ANOVA is when there's three or more groupings. The ANOVA returns two values, the f-stat and the p-value. The f-stat is a measure of effect. I haven't talked about it much in class. The p-value we interpret just like we did with the t-test. If the p-value is below 0.05, we say there is a statistically significant relationship or difference between the average, between the group's means. If it's above 0.05, we say there is no statistically significant difference between the group's means. Tukey's test is a post hoc test, meaning if the ANOVA was significant, we then run Tukey's test. It's basically doing a bunch of t-tests for all the different possible pairs. It adjusts it a little bit. Returns that chart. There's a bit there. It returns the averages for each group, and it also returns the mean dip. The mean dip is just the mean difference. What is the average difference between those two groups? The way that's calculated is it's the group 2's means minuses the group 1's means. A little bit different than what I think our intuition would guess. So it's group 2 minus group 1. We also have the p-value adjusted. As that adjusted p-value, again, Tukey's test kind of adjusts the p-value a little bit, but we still use that 0.05 as our cutoff. If it's less than 0.05, we say the results are statistically significant. Above it, it's not. There's also the reject column. It's going to be true or false. It's going to be in connection with that p-value adjusted. If it's true, we reject the null hypothesis that the means are equal and say the difference is significant. If it's false, we failed to reject the null hypothesis. The difference is not significant. So here's an example. Let's say I wanted to see if there is an average difference in test scores in 83, 92, 100 between the morning sections and the afternoon sections. What test would I run? T-test. I've got two groupings, morning and afternoon. I run a t-test and it's going to return two values, a t-stat and a p-value. If that p-value is less than 0.05, then that's saying that the average the difference in the morning section's average and the afternoon section's average is statistically significant, that there is a relationship between the morning and afternoon. We can't say it causes it. We don't know what the reason is. Maybe it's I teach better in one or the other. Maybe it's the type of students that sign up for one or the other. Maybe it's one doesn't have to wake up early, right? Like, we don't know what, we can't say it's a cause. We also don't know what the reason is, but there is an association that's statistically significant between whether or not you're in the morning, whether or not you're in the afternoon, and your average on the exam. If I want to look at the averages between section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, and see if there's a statistically significant difference there, what test do I run?
ANOVA.
ANOVA, because now I'm looking at 4 groupings. Return an F-stat and a p-value. Same thing, if that p-value is less than 0.05, the results are statistically significant. At least one of the sections average is statistically significant from another section's average. I don't know where that is. I don't know if section 1's averages is more statistically significant than section 2's. So that's when I run the post hoc test, Tukey's test. And now I see the individual pairings for each combination. 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 2 and 4. Yeah.
Question,
Yeah.
could we run ANOVA and then Tukey's? We could just.
Instead of just going straight to Tukey's? Great question. So just by design, it's supposed to be a post hoc test. Now, if you were to just jump straight to Tukey's, you probably would get a good sense anyway. Although Tukey's doesn't give you holistically if there's a difference, although if you see it's any difference, it would be. I don't know the exact reason. My guess is in some places, like Excel, the tool to run an ANOVA is way easier than Tukey. So it's like, do the ANOVA first. Maybe that gives you all you need. And then if you need more, do a Tukey's test.
So the Tukey's test gives us the mean diff and like
Yeah.
things to measure the difference. Does the t-test give us that, or does it give us like any sort of like way to measure the difference?
No, it doesn't. Test whether it's negative or positive will tell you which one's more. I have to look it up which one's which. I'd always forget. But you'd want to pair with like a bar chart or something like that to
Okay.
like see the difference or just find the means of that group, right? You can do that and that would give you the actual difference.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, but for the t-test, when it says like categorical variables, you can still do like 2 numeric variables as well, right? Like the mean and the mean, or
Great question. So if you have 2 pure categorical variables, like your average on the test at 95, 93, and how many hours you spent on the test, that's when you're doing these type of tests. But if you're like, what's the difference between my morning section, categorical, and afternoon? That's when you'll do t-tests. Now we're using the mean of those values. So that's where there's kind of now this 3rd dimension of mean. But the variables we're looking at is your section type. And it's either morning or afternoon. Any other questions here?
So like in the homework, when you do the categorical versus profit, you like do it in groups.
Yes.
What test is that? Is that the ANOVA test?
Yeah, so the groups, great question. So you need to do groups for both t-test and ANOVA. On the homework where it explicitly shows you the groups, that's probably the t-test. Just because there's only 2 of them, it's really easy just to do the filtering right there and there. The example I've given for the ANOVA is it's creating the groups, but it's automating it in within the loop. So if you see like a loop, that code is for the ANOVA. And you also look at what function's being called, that's an indicator. So for the t-test, it's like t-test underscore IND. For ANOVA, it's F underscore. That will be the main indicator of which test is being run. All right, last is categorical and categorical variables. So we have our observed crosstab, technically not a statistical test, but I didn't really know where else to throw it on the slide, so I just put it there in that column. Just FYI, it's actually more commonly known as a contingency table or frequency table, but it contains the observed counts. On the test, I'm not going to try and trip you up with the wording or terminology, just more of an FYI as you just like move forward in life. But it shows the counts or the frequencies of those 2 categorical variables. The chi-square test returns a variety of things. Two of them are the expected counts and that p-value. So the expected counts are what do we expect the values to be? So in that bike buyers data set, 30% of the records were from Europe. So we would expect that 30% of those that purchased a bike are from Europe, and 30% of those that didn't purchase a bike are from Europe. The math is the row total times the column total divided by grand total. You don't need to know that equation for the exam, but that's the math that's being done to generate the expected counts. As you look at the observed counts and the expected counts, you'll probably notice that there are some differences. Then the question is, are those differences statistically significant? If the p-value with that chi-square test is below 0.05, then we say yes. Those differences are statistically significant. There is an association there. If the p-value is above 0.05, then we say whatever differences I'm observing could just be due to chance.
So a chi-square test is behind the scenes, kind of making an observed crosstab, and we can choose to show that or not, like in a separate.
Exactly. We can choose to display it, but it's still generating it.
Okay, so it's doing all the comparing, that's what that p-value is coming.
Yeah. And it also will generate degrees of freedom and the chi-square stat. We just haven't talked about them in this class. Okay. Visualizations, it's just important to know like when to use what visualization. So for univariate analysis, if it's numeric, we're looking at a histogram or a box plot. Histogram is helpful for looking at frequencies, skewness. Box plot is helpful for like outliers. If it's categorical, that's where we get the count plot. Bivariate numeric to numeric, we have a scatter plot. Numeric and categorical, we've got a bar plot. Categorical, we've got the crosstab heat maps. There's a good question in an earlier section that I'll just address here. Question was, what's the difference between like a histogram and a bar plot? Because at first glance, they look pretty similar. So a histogram is when you just have a single variable that you're visualizing. It's a univariate visualization. So if it's a numeric one, we usually have bins. So let's say that I'm looking at my average test scores. Actually, not average, it's just test scores. And this is my 90 to 100 bin, my 80 to 90, etc. And the bar is just the count of those that are within the 90 to 100, count of those that are within 80 to 90, a count of those that are within 30 or 40. Hopefully no one's here, right? But it's just the count of people that fall within this range of test scores. It's just looking at one variable. Notice there's no y variable. It's just the single. A bar plot visualizes the relationship between a categorical variable. So let's say section type. I've got my morning and my afternoon, and then my y variable, which is numeric, which is my average test scores. And I got my morning average and my afternoon average. Yeah. So, first glance, again, you're looking at it, you're like, oh, there's bars, right? Like I see like there's similarities here, but the difference is histogram is just a univariate visualization. A bar plot is a numeric and categorical.
Will bar plots always use averages of groups?
By default, yes, but there are ways that you can configure it and the parameters to make it something.
Wait, what's a count plot again?
Yeah, count plot is like, let's say, it's similar to histogram. So a count plot is when you just have one variable. Let's just do like favorite color. And I've got green, blue, and red. How many people here are their favorite color is green out of those three? 10, right? Sorry, 10. How many people is it blue? 4? Okay, it's more. How many people is it red?
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Count plot is just the count of those categories. So it's for a categorical variable, green, blue, red. compared to the histogram was more of that. Those are between 0 and 10% on the grades, 10, 11, and 20, etc. Any other questions here? Okay, last concept is this subsetting. There are similarities with SQL, but there's also enough differences that it can be frustrating. And so I want to highlight some of the common questions or things that I see students getting tripped up on. So in this example, return all records where the age is greater than 30. We have our DF square bracket, DF age is greater than 30. A common question is, why do we see DF twice? And DF is just the name of the data frame in this example. So the first DF, the inner DF is going to create a Boolean mask, so true or false on whether or not that age is greater than 30. And then the outer DF is the one that's going to perform that selection of if it's true, return the record, false, not. The way I like to think about it is we always start off referencing our data frame square bracket. I'm filtering my data frame. After that, anytime I mention a column, it has to be tied to the data frame again. So that's why you see it twice. Once because I'm just filtering the data frame in general, and two, because I mentioned one other column, age, so the data frame's tied to that. In this example, return rows where the age is greater than 30 and it's a female. Common mistake I see is not wrapping the condition in parentheses. So unlike SQL, where if you have a series of and, you don't need to wrap those conditions in parentheses. In Python subsetting, if you have more than one, those conditions have to be wrapped in parentheses. So notice that my DF age right here, that's wrapped, and my gender is female, that one's also wrapped in parentheses. The other thing, notice that it uses the and sign instead of the word and. You can't use the word and, it has to be the and sign.
Will you get unhappy if we use dot notation?
That's fine. So the way that this will be tested, there's practice problems on the practice exam that are pretty similar. This one will be more of the identify which one is right or which one is wrong for this prompt, so you won't have to type it out. I don't think I use a dot no. I'm 99% sure I don't use a dot notation, just because we didn't cover it in class. I didn't want that to be the thing that threw people off, Okay, this one is an or. You use the pipe for the or, not the word or. But again, you're wrapping it in parentheses. And then using dot isn't is just another way of doing a bunch of ors. So if you do dot isn't and pass it a list, if it's within that list, it will be returned. Okay, questions?
Well, the syntax on this one is, the isn't with the parentheses is just the method, and then inside that you have your list. How come you can't just say how come you have to have the square brackets? Chicago, comma, New York. So dot is in parentheses.
Yep.
How come you can't get rid of the square bracket? We'll say dot is in.
Yeah, because we're passing a list, and so a list needs to be within the square brackets. So. Okay, here's what we've got. So that's the end of the content review. I want to introduce the homework that's going to be due on Friday, and then also the Proctorio thing. The homework that's due on Friday, I think should also just be a good practice. I don't think it's another thing to do, it's another thing to do. But I think it will help you prepare for the midterm. What it is it's Iowa housing data, and we're doing a targeted EDA. So instead of let's explore everything within this data set, we're going to target it to specific questions. So describe the association between home size and sale price. Home size is numeric, sales price is numeric. Okay, I'm probably looking at a correlation, a linear regression, a scatter plot. All of those things will help me describe that association. I don't need to go run and do an ANOVA on 2 other random variables. So here are those 8 questions that you'll investigate just to help us automate the grading. There will then be multiple choice questions about those results. Where we're going with this is after the midterm, we're moving into data storytelling. So how do we take this analysis, but actually like present it in a way where it can influence like business decisions? And so we'll kind of take some of these questions and use it as a way to tell a story. Like we'll actually describe the association between home price and sale price and pull analysis from that that could be beneficial to a sales buyer within there. So that's kind of where we're going. But for right now, it will introduce you, not introduce you, but let you practice subsetting. This problem will let you practice linear regression, and like this one will let you do like ANOVAs, I think. So kind of a review there. What I also would love for you guys to do is in exams, there is the midterm proctorial practice. There's one question, it's what is 2 + 2? And even if you get it wrong, it's still gonna give you the points. But it's just to get you set up on proctorial. I know most of you have done it by now, but just if there are issues, we've got us here, we can help, troubleshoot those now. If you just want to go through that, so you're taking a test, especially if you're taking it Monday night and like, you just want to get the test over with, you're not having to worry about the setup of. So.
I already said this, but do you recommend doing the homework 8 before taking the test, like practice?
I think it is gonna be a good practice. I don't think there's anything new necessarily though, so if you already feel ready and just wanna knock the exam out, I think you should do that.
Is this one more like the whole homeworks where it's just mostly graded on looking the right answers on Learning Suite?
So you don't even necessarily worry about your file. I will say, again, later, you'll be assigned one of those 8 questions to tell a story on. So like, if you save your code, that'll make your life easier later.
Okay, but it's not like the last one.
It's not like we're grading it on the cleanliness.
Oh.
Okay, that's all I have for you. You can use this extra 15 minutes to do that proctorial thing or homework or exam or ask us questions. But I got nothing else specifically. Let me just log on.
Gotta go.